With 20 games under their belt, we continue our evaluations of what we've seen from every player on the roster. We'll be looking at how Bam Adebayo and Jaime Jaquez Jr. can improve, as well as some key reserve players like Josh Richardson, Caleb Martin, and much more. A great episode you don't want to miss on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me, as always, is David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We've got part two of our two-parter 20-game player evaluations today. Just to refresh for those who listened to part one, we're evaluating each of the Heat's players like it's a job evaluation. We're going to rate them in terms of their productivity, job knowledge, collaboration skills, and attendance before identifying some areas of improvement. In part one, we covered Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Haywood Highsmith, Kyle Lowry, and Thomas Bryant. We'll get to Jaime Jaquez Jr. We'll get to Nikola Jovic and some others in today's episode. But let's start, David, with Bam Adebayo. What did you have for productivity for Bam?
I think he's exceeded that. I think it's pretty clear he's having his best season of his career, and while he's been bogged down by injury, and I think it's going to be a nagging issue throughout the rest of the year, I think overall he's just been really, really strong on both the offensive and defensive end. He's exceeded expectations, and that ties into his job knowledge. I don't think anybody has a better understanding of what they're required to do on a nightly basis than Bam Adebayo, whether it's doing something different on defense, whether it's being the hub on offense, understanding when to be aggressive. He has taken leaps and bounds in that respect, and I think he's exceeded whatever expectations fans have had. I think people are still going to want more of Bam. I think just when those ideas are so entrenched as they have been throughout the first few years of his career about being aggressive, etc., it's hard to kind of shake free of that. So I think that's going to be a problem, but that's their problem, not Bam's problem. He's been great. Collaborative skill, look, again, third of the team in assists. He's been very, very good. He's exceeded that. He's a great teammate. He does everything necessary. He helps everybody out. And he just does such a great job as a team defender.
Most important screen setter.
Yes.
Yes. Everything. His screens trigger so many of Miami's actions, and that's important.
That's a great point. Great point. And attendance, look, it's below standard. I think, we've seen Bam be such a durable player in the past, and you wonder whether or not this will start to kind of inch up. I think it's going to be a problem. And again, I don't know how much more of an issue this hip problem could be throughout the rest of the season, but it's the kind of thing where it feels like it just needs time to heal. And that is a luxury he does not have. So
if I'm 20 games into the year, zooming out, and if I'm in charge of the Miami Heat and I'm flagging things that could be an issue down the road, probably the first thing I am flagging is Bam Adebayo's left hip. And that injury that's been bothering him and lingering all year. Even if he's not missed games, it's bothered him during games and limited him during games. We think about the fourth quarter against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. The fact that he had to sit out the second half against what team was that? Milwaukee? I forget what team. Yeah, that is an issue, and it's okay in November. It's not great in December. You really don't want that to be an issue in April. And so if I'm Miami, that's something I'm flagging right now. And I'm trying to figure out whatever I can do, get my team doctors, all these people. What do we need to do now over these next month or two to make sure that this is not an issue when these games really matter?
Yeah. In terms of area for improvement, I'm going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to say he needs to be continued aggressiveness. That's the thing he needs to continue to work on the most, because I don't want him to just fall back on what he's done over the past few seasons and just say, oh, let me defer to this guy or do that. No. You're Bam Adebayo. You're a top 20 player in the NBA. Sometimes you need to be reminded of that, and sometimes you need to show it and do so in as aggressive and a gaudy fashion as possible. Score 40 points, dunk on people's heads, make plays defensively, swat shots into the fourth row so that people will know that you're as good as you are, because right now there's just way too much buzz about Rudy Gobert being the best defensive player in the year. And yeah, he's fine, but he's no Bam Adebayo.
Bam's defensive player of the year candidacy took a hit when Miami just gave up 300 combined points to the Pacers this weekend, and they've dropped now to 16th in defensive rating. That's not awesome. But my note
without Bam,
without
Bam.
Yeah, no, I even said Saturday, I'm like that game on Saturday where they gave up 140 plus, that should go into the Bam's Defensive Player of the Year reel. He wasn't playing in that game. That was the point. My note for Bam, 20 games in, find a way to weaponize your dominance.
Yeah.
Find a way to weaponize that dominance. We know that you could score 30 a game. We know that you've got that little foul line jumper. We know that you've been getting to the rim better and being more of a physical threat. And he's drawing those double teams now too. We understand that he's the hub of Miami's offense and a lot of what they do there. Find a way to weaponize that. This is a stat from our friend Cooper Moorhead at MiamiHeat.com. Bam Adebayo passes out of the short roll 1.6 times per 100 possessions as compared to 1.2 times per 100 possessions last season. Or 2 seasons ago. What that means is that he's finding ways. He's getting better at and I don't want to just focus on the short roll thing because that's sort of like an NBA nerd. Like, oh my God, he's got to always pass out the short roll, like the Draymond Green thing. And that's a very important thing. Miami's problem is that they don't have a bunch of shooters that are spacing the floor for Bam. It's like, okay, who's he going to actually pass to? Is he really going to just be passing to Haywood Highsmith in the corner 6 times a game? Probably not. Yeah. But if he consistently draws those doubles, and what that stat shows is that he's getting better at passing out of those opportunities. He needs to really take a more meaningful leap, I think, in that area. There are times where he's got the ball 13 feet, 15 feet away from the basket, and he's looking a little bit too much sometimes to get his own shot. So it's a balance of stay aggressive, but also if you're attracting that double team, the obvious thing is to just swing it and find the open teammate. And he's a great passer. So it's tough because there are so many things like you referenced, so many people, so much outside noise saying, go be more aggressive, go be more aggressive. And sometimes that aggressiveness is passing the ball. Sometimes that aggressiveness is just finding the open teammate. That can still be aggressive. It's how you're aggressive getting to those spots. And that's something I pointed out a lot with Bam. He's using his physicality much more than ever. And that physicality could draw doubles and create openings for other teammates. So that's sort of my note.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's talk about Caleb Martin there.
Sure.
Unfortunately, a limited sample size, only 9 games here, so that totally impacts what we're able to evaluate, although there has been progress in that regard. So a lot of these marks will be lower than he should, but that doesn't mean that we won't. Well, we expect him to get better. His productivity is below standards, that's for sure. He set such a high standard last year. We think he can achieve that again. I'm not overly concerned unless we're looking at maybe a 40 games. If midway through the season and the trade deadline right around the corner and he hasn't turned that corner, that's something that you might want to monitor. In terms of job knowledge, he absolutely meets expectations. I think there's still moments, even right now, Caleb, where he still looks a little, I wouldn't say lost, but maybe not necessarily as engaged as we've seen him in the years past. And again, that might change based on his health and everything else, being able to be more impactful because he has these incredible physical skills that make up for whatever lack of experience or lack of understanding might be on any play-to-play basis. Collaborative skills, he absolutely meets expectations there. He's a solid player, makes the right play, does whatever he can to help everybody else out. And again, a great locker room presence. And attendance, that's below standards. What are you going to do? He's been hurt. That's not a knock on him personally. It's just he hasn't been available for this team. He's only played in 9 games this year. Area for improvement. Oh, really? I think to me, he needs to take everything a step up. But my point is that I think it's also due to him not being healthy or anywhere close to 100%. And we'll start to see more and more progress as we have over the last few weeks.
Caleb Martin over his last 4 games, 18 points, 14 points, 14 points, and 22 points. So that's what he scored. So things are starting to trend in the right direction for him. My thing for him, just get that 3-point rate up a little bit more. That productivity is good over those last 4 games, but he needs to be one of these guys. And I don't mean to just keep going back to 3-point shooting, but there's a select group of guys on this team who are role players who need to space the floor. That is their job offensively. And it's Haywood Highsmith and it's Caleb Martin and it's a few other guys on this roster. But Caleb Martin, he's at 3.4 3-point attempts per game. He's shooting 29% from distance this season. So get that 3-point rate up a little bit more. Don't always pass that up to drive to the basket, even though those opportunities have looked good, especially he's got that like patented, hey, I start from the corner, drive baseline, spin move, finish at the rim. Like I like that kind of stuff. But when the 3-point shot is there, just take it and don't worry too much about being, getting to the flashy rim stuff. So that's what I have for him. But like I said, I think the worst basketball of his season is behind him. I think you said that too. And it'll probably get better from here. First 20 games, Jaime Jaquez Jr. Is there anything that he could improve on? We're going to talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The weather's getting colder, but the offers are still hot over at FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And everybody gets a chance to win over at FanDuel. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The NFL action, it has been ramping up. The NBA season, so much to do, and the app is so easy to use, and you can place a wide range of betting options from spreads to player props, over-unders, and so much more. Go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and kick off the NFL and NBA season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. How can Nikola Jovic get on the court? We'll tell you the one area that he needs to improve to do that in the next segment, but we're going to start this one with the rookie Jaime Jaquez Jr. and his 20-game evaluation. What do we got?
The rookie almost seems insulting at this point because he's just been so good. So in terms of productivity, like that's exceeded expectations. I think some people are kind of coming out now and saying, oh, I always thought he'd have this game. And some draft experts are saying, you know what, we saw this potential for him. But that's all fine and good. You still need to be able to maximize it at the NBA level. It's not just about what skills you have. It's about finding the right fit, the right opportunity, and then in taking those real select moments and finding ways to capitalize on them. And Jaime has done that better than most. I mean, not just better than most rookies, better than most players. Like even older veterans just don't have the awareness and the skill set to tie it all together and say, this is my opportunity. I'm going to do what the team needs of me. So exceeds expectations. Yes.
It is insane how good of a fit it has been from day one with Jaime in Miami. And if I'm a rival team, I am so annoyed that this is happening. If I'm the Celtics, if I'm the Milwaukee Bucks, if I'm the Philadelphia 76ers, if I'm whatever of these teams, the Knicks, I'm like, how did they get a rookie to do this? Like, it's one thing when it's like the undrafted Max Strus and Haywood, and like these, like, okay, like you're grooming them for years and you're sort of just like Taylor, like clay, molding them into the shape of your Heat culture stuff, like whatever. But this guy just came from UCLA, moves across the country. And he's only been in Florida 2 other times in his life before this, and he comes to Miami, and he owns the city. I went to Saturday's game as a fan, and I sat with my wife and my in-laws there, and they were just like, "Oh my God, everybody loves Jaime," and it's like he comes in and people go nuts for him, and there's a lot of reasons for that in Miami, but I just think that if you're a rival front office, you have to be so annoyed 20 games in. You're like, wow, I can't believe they found a guy who could do this for them right away.
There's got to be at least 10 to 12 teams that are probably kicking themselves and not wanting to take it. Like, I mean, this isn't a debate about like just a top 3 or top 5 rookie this year. Like there has to be a bunch of teams that could say, you know what, we view ourselves as playoff contenders. We would love to have a guy like Jaime on our roster, and I think he's just been
isn't that it's sort of interesting? We haven't really talked about it in this way, but the fact that Miami backed their way into the playoffs last year and didn't get the number 1 seed the way that they had it a few years ago gave them the 18th pick. Like they had a very good draft pick for a team that went to the finals. Like you don't see a team that goes to the finals picking 18 with their own pick, right? Not a pick that they traded for. Everybody else, Philadelphia, Boston, like all these teams that we're talking about, the Knicks, they picked worse. Like they didn't even have a chance to get Jaime Jaquez Jr. So you had a playoff team going and getting a rotation-ready player who's 22 years old. He's closer to Tyler Hero in age than he is Nikola Jovic, right? Like that's what we're talking about here. And it's such a perfect fit. And again, like the people will be, the Heat got so lucky backing their way in as a number 8 seed, so they got the number 18 pick overall. But it's that's what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway,
top knowledge, he's exceeded his expectations. Collaborative skills exceeds. Attendance exceeds. He's been Miami's most consistent player there. Areas for improvement, none. How could you say that about a rookie? None, other than just continue to develop consistency in every aspect because he's been that good.
We agree on this. I have written here no notes. I have no notes for you, Jaime. Come into the office. What can I improve on? I know you want more. I got no notes. Keep doing what you're doing. Feel free to keep doing more. Just do it. Like, you're our number one salesperson. You're rookie of the year. Like, just keep doing whatever you want to do. Go find more accounts if you want them. Go pick them up. Like, just do whatever you want to do. Just keep doing it.
That's the equivalent of like an entry level person coming in there and like being better than like their manager that's been there for like a decade. That's what basically comes in. And you're paying him entry level salary. You're going, yeah, I hope he doesn't complain.
He's a guy on a sales team where you have a manager on a sales team, and you got maybe, let's call it 5 salespeople. And this sales team in their region has ranked, second or like third or fourth in the region in terms of overall productivity, right? And you get this rookie, your first-year sales associate, and he comes to your team, and he just vaults you to the top of the list. And you're like, oh my God, we're like, all of a sudden, everything we thought about what our team can do this year has changed. Like, we can maybe go. We thought we'd be back here as like the 3rd or 4th best sales team in the region. Maybe we could be the 2nd best. Maybe we could be the top sales team in the region this year. Like, everything that we thought has changed because of what this guy's brought day one.
Yeah, we beat that metaphor to death, but yes, absolutely. I think it's all fair. And look, rival buyers are calling you up and saying, "Hey, this kid, they're already trying to pluck him out of there, trying to move him to the respective teams." So it's just amazing what he's been able to do. Who do we have next on our list here? Do we go to Josh Richardson?
Let's do let's go ahead to Josh Richardson. Yeah.
Well, Josh coming back to the team, a lot of nostalgia there. Unfortunately, he has not met our expectations. He's been below expectations, I think, in terms of overall productivity and job knowledge. Okay. What's your argument there?
Well, he's averaging 10.5 points per game. He's shooting 46% overall. He got off the start of the year, he missed 3 of his first 23 3-pointers or something. Like, it was bad. Since then, he's shot a lot better from distance. 3.1 assists per game. The rebounding isn't great, but it's never been a strength of his. I think he's been pretty good. And he's given him, here's 19 points here, 15 points there. Like, he doesn't have to be an every night kind of guy, but if you can get 15 plus points per game from him once a week, which is pretty much what he's been doing, I think that's fine. I think he's at needs expectations for me.
Okay.
How much more are you expecting than 10 points a game?
I think the defensive issues have been problematic, and I think maybe that might be health related as well. But if I can hold it against Caleb, who's proven himself much more consistently, at least over this iteration of the Heat, I can hold Josh to that same level. And I think he just hasn't been able to do it I think his off-ball defense has been pretty solid. I think his scoring has been inconsistent, but trending in the right direction. I would just like to see it more.
I think Josh has always been a little bit of an overrated defensive player. I think people look at him as a 3-and-D kind of guy whose defense has always been more above average than very good.
Yeah, that's fair. He just seems to gamble a little bit as a point of attack defender.
That's very true. Yeah, and he's only getting he's less than a steal per game. Yeah, less than a steal per game. So that's a good point. And I've noticed the same thing. He shouldn't be gambling as much as he is.
Job knowledge just meets expectations because, again, I think he's kind of finding that balance between being the point guard, the 2 guard, the guy who comes off the bench to provide defense. I think it's a little bit tough for him to figure out exactly his role on this team, and he hasn't met, to my standards anyway, those expectations. So he's just at meeting what the expectations were for him. Collaboratively, I think he's been great. He does what he can for others. He makes plays. He has been a helpful teammate, so I don't have any problem with that. It's just been meeting my standards. So, and in terms of attendance, again, bouncing back from injury, he's been meeting those standards. Not a high standard, but again, I think hopefully we'll see him more consistently and more healthy as the season progresses, so that he can be the kind of impact player that a lot of Heat fans are hoping that he will be.
17 out of 20 games he's played, just a hair under 28 minutes per game. Yep, meet expectations is fine.
If there's an area of improvement for me, I would say actually it's all. And it's, again, kind of like Caleb, I think it's tied to his health. But if there's one thing in particular I want from him, it's the point of attack defense and 3-point shooting. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword there. Like, if you're going to be there on offense, when those shots are open, you got to knock them down. The confident version of Josh, and I don't think we see this nearly enough, is such a good player where he's driving and putting up that floater or getting to the rim for a nice acrobatic layup and letting it fly with confidence and ease from the 3-point line. It's just, we just haven't seen that version of him as consistently.
I think it's a good note. I think he probably also knows it. If you called him into your office 20 games in, like, we gotta get that 3-point percentage.
Yeah,
he'd be like, yeah, I know that. One thing
He
I would
offered
tell him,
first. I know. I struggle. I know. I'll be better. It's like, all right, Josh, don't beat yourself up over this, buddy. We still have 62 games left.
No, but it's a good note also. It's like, hey, if you're open, just shoot it. We love you, Josh. We brought you here for a reason. If you're open, shoot it, right? He's also one of those guys like Caleb and Haywood whose role is basically just space the floor. So that's part of it.
Yes.
The other thing I would say for him is, and this is probably something that he wouldn't anticipate when he walked into the office 20 games in, when Tyler Hero comes back, and that's happening soon, can you help him play off the ball a little bit more in that second unit?
Very good.
I'm going to put that on you because he's actually, I thought, exceeded my expectations as the backup point guard. I think as a facilitator, a guy who just sort of sets the table, he's not driving and kicking or anything like that, but I never thought he would do that. That would be weird,
right?
Because that's not his game. So, but in terms of, hey, I bring the ball up the floor, I get guys in position, all that stuff, I thought he's been very good at that. Can I trust you that when Tyler Hero comes back and we get you guys together in that second unit, that you can cover up for him defensively, to your point, David, which you need to be able to do, especially when he's on the court and you're probably going to have a little bit more of a burden when that happens. But can you also help him play off the ball more? Can we trust you to run the offense so that Tyler does not have to, in other words? And that would be one thing I would be preparing him for when Tyler does come back. All right, let's move on. How can Nikola Jovic get on the floor? Here's one area that I think if he improves on, he could get on the floor. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. True story here. Family friend, my wife's relatives came into town, and they're basketball fans. They wanted to catch a Heat game, and they didn't know where to get tickets. I was like, you know what? Have you tried this app called Gametime? And they're like, they'd never heard of it. They downloaded the app, found exactly where they wanted to sit, got the tickets real quick, just a few taps of the button, got themselves a little discount to boot, saw exactly where they were going to be sitting in the Kaseya Center, and they loved the experience. They thought it was great. They said they were going to use Gametime for every purchase, whether it comes to comedy shows, concerts, whatever event you might be looking for. If you're in town for a day or if that's where you live, Gametime makes things so much easier. Again, they've got these great ticket deals all the time. You'll get the best price guaranteed on whatever tickets you might be looking for. And if you're in town, let's say you're visiting for travel, you say, I got a couple hours to kill. Let me go catch a comedy show. Oh, let me go see whatever team is playing here, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever sport you might want to watch. Gametime has you covered. Download the Gametime app right now. You create an account and you use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Like I said before, you get $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA, but only when you download the Gametime app and create an account. That's Locked On, LOCKEDONNBA. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Everydayers, tune in Wednesday night for our post-game reactions to the Heat's game in Toronto. We'll have our biggest takeaways from the game, hopefully some credit cookies to hand out. We'll also get to your questions that you send in on Twitter using that hashtag AskLHeat. But we're continuing along with our 20-game evaluations, wrapping it up with Nikola Jovic, Kevin Love, and Orlando Robinson. Let's go right into Nico, David.
Yeah, well, Nico, the subject of some controversy. We'll try to get through these quickly. Unfortunately, he has not been as productive as I'd like, so he's below standards in terms of that overall productivity. Job knowledge, I think, is the biggest knock on him. Below standards for sure. Not understanding his role on defense, not quite sure what to do on offense. It just lets him look a lot like a deer caught in the headlights out there. Collaborative skill, I think he meets those expectations in terms of trying to do what's best for this team and being the good, dutiful soldier and everything else, and certainly making plays for others. It just hasn't always tied into something that looks like a finished product. In attendance, well, he's met standards, but those are pretty low considering he just really hasn't been available to play. Did get that stint in Sioux Falls. I wonder if we'll see that again down the road. And in terms of just overall areas for improvement, I think we're talking about defense. That's where it starts. And also choose who you talk to from Serbian media a little bit more closely.
Can you just ace the zone? Ace the zone defense.
That's pretty
Nico
good.
has talked a lot. He's talked about I don't really know what defensive coverages they want me in or what I'm going to be even good at. He's not a great man-to-man defensive player. He's not great at switching at this stage of his career. We have seen in the past Heat players force their way onto the court because they are so good at the zone. I think about a guy like Derek Jones Jr., who couldn't do much of anything outside of defending in the zone. That was pretty much it. And a putback dunk once a week. And that was pretty much what he was doing. I think Nico could find his way on the court. The great thing about the zone is it's positionless, essentially, right? You pretty much put Bam in the middle of it. And then you kind of figure it out from there. You could even put Haywood Highsmith in the middle of it. We've seen the Heat do that a few times this season. But for Jovic, who has struggled to find his spot defensively and find a position to play at the NBA club level, the zone, if you can ace that, it's a little bit, the position doesn't matter as much. Are you at the top of it? Are you in the corner of it? To me, it doesn't really matter. Just find a spot on it to ace the zone. And then you do that. And then you could find maybe some spots offensively, catch and shoot, get guys going, push the ball up in transition, all that kind of stuff. Offensively, I think he could do some stuff. And in those games where Miami, they've not used zone as much this year, but in the games where they are going to use zone, it's going to be the weird ones, isn't it? It's going to be those weird games where Nico might find his way getting his number called when he wasn't expecting it, because that's what's going to happen in those weird games. So that's what I would say for Nico is ace the zone, and who knows, you might actually find your way on the floor more often than you have so far this season.
That's a great point. I think that really is the key for him, because he just needs to be able to show something defensively where that Erik Spoelstra feels much more comfortable putting him out there. Like, there's no denying what offensive skills he brings to the table, even though I think there's still some question about how he fits into what role offensively. But if he's just not going to get the opportunity defensively, which is why we talked about him maybe being a trade target down the road, just because he hasn't been able to carve out any playing time. But let's move on here. What do you want to take on next, Orlando? Kevin Love. Well, I mean, Kevin, look, to me, we talked about the start of the season. We weren't sure what to expect. We wouldn't know if he's going to be a starter, whether he's going to come off the bench, whether he'd be a place in the rotation at all. But he's wound up thriving as a second-team center, and the overall presence in the locker room is still great. Like, the vibes have been immaculate since picking up Kevin Love, and I think that's a big part of – he's been a huge part of why he's a great teammate. He's a guy that everybody wants to talk to. He's an experienced veteran.
Yep.
And so in terms of overall productivity, I still have him at meeting standards, but I'm leaning more towards exceeding them just because he's been so good off the court. He doesn't really like the impact that he has offensively and defensively on the court is kind of minimal, but overall I'd still have him kind of meeting those standards. Job knowledge, he's exceeded my standards. Like, he's just been so good at knowing what's required of him in this team that is not meant for everybody. Not everybody finds, their comfort here in Miami as easily as Kevin does. And as much as an experienced veteran as he might be, that could be an adjustment for a lot of players. He's fit in.
He fit right in.
Adjusted very well. Yeah, absolutely.
Collaboratively, taking a little bit of that Udonis Haslem sort of locker room vet role on, which is important.
Absolutely. So collaboratively, he's got exceeded expectations in my book. He's met standards of that, although he had some personal issue that he had to take care of. But other than that, he's been pretty standard, pretty much available for this Miami team. And in terms of overall areas for improvement, just durability and three-point shooting, because I think he's Miami's best option as a second-team center, and just continue to knock down that three-point shot. Has not been as good at the three-point shot as he has been in years past, so he needs to get those numbers up.
Yeah, I had two guys on my list where I really didn't have any notes for them. Jaime, obviously we covered him. My other one's Kevin Love. I have no real notes for you. I have none. Enough. He's having a bit of a renaissance season. He's got increases in his rebound rate, his assists, his three-point shooting is up, actually. It's at 33% now, which is better than what it was last year. It was like 27, 28%. That's good. I think if we can get that up a little bit more, it would be even better. But he knows that. I don't need to tell Kevin Love that. He's going to obviously try to make more three-pointers. He's not going to be like, I'm good missing as many as I'm missing. And he's not even missing. Like, 33% is fine. Like, I'm okay with it. So I have, like you, I have exceeding expectations and all that. And again, like, he's having a renaissance season right now. It's a bounce-back year for Kevin Love at this stage in his career. I think he's been awesome. And I love how Spoelstra has made that decision to staple Kevin Love's minutes to Jimmy Butler. I love that, because Bam comes out, Jimmy Butler comes back in the second quarter, and him and Kevin Love are playing together in that second unit. Kevin Love obviously spaces the floor, pick and pop stuff for Jimmy Butler. He's got great chemistry with Jaime Jaquez Jr. in terms of those inlet passes, those entry passes into the post. Obviously, that's there with Jimmy Butler. It has been since last year. He's been just a glue guy for that second unit who kind of makes everything click. And I think his spot as the second unit center right now is pretty established. I don't think that I'd be worried about that if I were Kevin.
Just one more note on that, on everything. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a coach rely on a player as much as they do on Kevin Love. Like, Kevin Love has such a loud and respected voice as in terms of being able to recognize what he sees on the floor as much as anybody. I don't think I've ever seen Spo not necessarily defer, but welcome like whatever Kevin has to say, because he just respects his experience and his understanding of the game so much. Like, he has been such a great fit in Heat culture. And look, a team like Cleveland probably could have used him. Like, I know the grumbling last year was, oh, he can't accept his role. We're too deep, etc. The Cavs could certainly use a guy like Kevin Love, and maybe he's just made that adjustment here in Miami in terms of understanding that he's more of a reserve at this point in his career, but he's embraced it and he's thrived, and he's been a really good find for Miami.
Let's finish off with Orlando Robinson.
Orlando Robinson, hasn't had a lot of playing time. He's shown some flashes here, a little bit, better here and there. Also spent some time in Sioux Falls. To me, I've got him. He's meeting productivity standards, which again have been kind of inconsistent because we didn't know exactly what to expect from Orlando. He understands his job though, and I think that's important. So he understands, he meets his standards of job knowledge in terms of knowing what he has to do, providing the spark that he can offensively and defensively. Collaboratively, he's been a fine teammate. He helps others, does what he can to raise the ceiling for this group. So I've got him at meeting standards there. Attendance, similarly. He's been available. He just hasn't played, or he's been in Sioux Falls. That's not a knock on him. So he's met those standards. And in terms of area for improvement, whatever's keeping him out of the lineup, because I honestly don't know. Because when he comes in there, again, I think he's been mostly good. But there has to be something that Eric Spoelstra is seeing that I haven't been able to see. And if you've got it targeted or something specific that you think he needs to improve on.
How many centers are you going to play? You got Bam Adebayo, you have Kevin Love, and that's it.
That's fair.
That's all there is. And it's, again, the Kevin Love part of it where he spaces the floor for Jimmy Butler. Like, that's just more of a fit in what we need right now than it says anything about Orlando Robinson. That's all. It's just how many centers are you really going to play on a nightly basis? You're going to play 2 of them.
Fair enough. So, I mean, does he become a trade candidate at some point?
Yeah. No, I think you look at him for next year. You keep him in the pipeline. I think that's absolutely fine. Look, I've got all the same things that you have in terms of he's basically just meeting expectations. I have no real notes for him. Just sort of keep developing, keep doing stuff. Your best basketball for us is probably down the line, maybe even next season. But for me, I'd say keep taking those threes when you are on the court. Because if you are going to earn minutes ahead of Kevin Love, if you could mimic some of that floor spacing, that's the best way you could do it, because you could potentially be even better than him as a defender and maybe even as a rebounder. We've seen games where he gets 10 plus rebounds. Like Orlando Robinson can gobble up those rebounds, especially on the offensive glass. Those are the things. He is shooting 100% from 3-point range this season. Orlando Robinson, he's 4 for 4. He was 2 for 2 against Indiana the last night of that series in Miami. So to me, I'd say keep taking those threes, establish yourself as a rim protector on defense and a floor spacer on offense. That's your goal. Whether or not you're doing that for us in spot minutes here and there. With Bam Adebayo's hip injury, stay ready. You never know when those minutes are going to come. He's probably the fill-in starter for those random games that Bam has to miss, so that you can keep that rotation alignment with Kevin Love coming off the bench. And then if it's in the G League, do the same thing. When you're in Sioux Falls, keep it up. You got to just do the same thing, play the same role there. All right. That'll do it for our 2-parter 20-game player evaluations. If you missed part 1, make sure to check that out for our notes on Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, and a whole lot of other players. But thanks so much for everybody who tuned in. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast app.